Hilchos Terumos Perek Shneim Asar. The laws of the Truma separation, chapter 12. Every day we study a portion of Rambam, and besides for the portion of Rambam that we study every day, we study a portion of Chumash, the weekly Torah portion. And today's Chumash, today's Torah portion, the second portion of Parshas Emor, is all about Truma. All the verses that we've been using in the last couple of days to talk about the sources for who can eat Truma, who can't eat Truma, it's all in this week's Torah portion. So to be learning the laws of Truma and the Parsha of Truma is a big divine providence. Nevertheless, today, the chapter is not so much about who can and cannot eat Truma, but specifically about the laws around causing Truma to become ritually impure. Truma, food, we're going to see there's a whole section of this, of laws, in the 10th book of the Rambam, about how food can become impure. Truma is food, and it can also become impure. Ideally,
it's not only food.
Truma was only food. What else could it be? You're saying drinks?
The oil?
The oils. Yeah, okay. I'm saying, but stuff that came, that kind of produce from the ground, which could become, which could become impure. So if Truma is pure, that's the ideal way to consume it. If Truma is impure, then we said a couple of things in the other days that a Kohen would light it as fuel, he would use it for oil. So today we're going to be studying about the fact that ideally you should not make Truma impure. Do everything you can to avoid making Truma impure. Says the Rambam Halacha Aleph, Asur l'tamei es ha-Truma shel Eretz Yisrael k'shar ha-Kadashim. It's forbidden for a Jew to make Truma, biblical Truma, the one that was given in Israel, it's forbidden to make it impure like any other holy sacrifice. When you have a sacrifice, you have to protect it. You have a mitzvah to keep it pure. Nor should you bring it to impurity. In other words, you can't, that's the first thing is you can't directly make it impure. You can't even bring it to a state of impurity. Nor should you destroy it or ruin it. The ideal scenario is if it's pure truma, you eat it. If it's impure truma, then you burn it as fuel. However, when it comes to truma given in the diaspora, to begin with it's rabbinic, so you're actually allowed to directly make it impure even on a biblical level. Even though the only reason why diaspora truma is impure is rabbinic, because of the rabbinic decree that anything outside of Israel is impure. The reason that the laws are more lenient is because the fundamental obligation to give truma in the diaspora is rabbinic. Therefore, for example, nida kaitza lachala b'chutz haaretz. You can have a woman who's a nida, she's on her period, she's ritually impure, and she could be making a dough and taking challah, which is a holy portion, belongs to the Kohen. Technically, in Israel, she wouldn't be allowed to do that in times of old. When things were biblical, a ritually impure woman couldn't touch the dough. But nowadays in the diaspora, she can do it. She'ena muzheres ela la'achla loy ligaba, because the only warning she has is against eating pure food, holy foods. No prohibition to touch it, as we just explained. Halacha beis truma shenitmes besafik. You have, let's say, a barrel of wine of truma, and it's a doubt whether it became impure. Loy oichlim v'loy serfin. So because it's in doubt, we don't eat it, because it might be impure, but we don't burn it, like regularly impure truma. Elatia munachas, you leave it where it is, till it becomes definitely impure, and then you burn it. Now you should know, says the Rambam, that there are certain cases of doubt where we will tell you to burn the truma, as will be explained in the Rambam's 10th book when discussing the laws of ritual impurity. But the basic principle is that we don't burn out of doubt. Halacha gimel chavis shel truma shanela d'asfeik truma. You have a barrel of truma, it's the barrel on the screen, and there's a doubtful truma. You don't know, maybe a rodent touched it, maybe a rodent didn't touch it. So the Rambam, in the Talmud, there's an argument. Some people say that you should, even though of course you can't do anything to it, but you may want to move it to a place where it could become ritually impure, so you can burn it. The Rambam rules like the other opinion, which says no, don't do anything new to it. Don't move it from its place, don't uncover it. If you simply leave it where it is, till it becomes ritually impure and you burn it. In the meantime, you don't have to worry, maybe someone's going to eat it by mistake. Doesn't matter. You leave it where it is and let it become impure. Halacha Dalet. So for this, we have to understand a little bit how ancient wine presses used to work. So this is actually, they uncovered this today in Israel, archaeological find. And the way it used to go was as follows. You had this little square. It's a little bit destroyed because, over time. You had this little square where they would fill it up with grapes. And it would open into this pit over here where the wine would collect. So you would press the grapes, and then you would let all the wine flow into here. Now it seems like apparently after all the wine flowed into here, you would then move away the grapes from the top area and fill it up with barrels. That's where you began to store your barrels of wine. So in many situations, you could end up having a full barrel, a full pit here of wine, and up here, many barrels full of wine. So the Rambam considers now the following case. Chavis shenishbera bagas ha'elyoina, v'hatachtoina tmeya. You have a barrel in the top area of the press, and the commentaries explain that it's full of truma. So there's holy barrels on the top, and regular wine, that's how the commentaries explain it, not truma wine, regular wine in the bottom. The truma is pure, the regular wine is impure. Now, what happens is like this.
Why it is impure?
It became impure. Somebody touched it, that was impure, whatever. That's the scenario. The scenario is you have on top truma that's pure, on the bottom you have regular wine that's impure. And what happened is a barrel up here broke. And the wine is about to spill down into this pit over here, which is going to create two problems. One problem is that the truma is going to become impure. You have pure truma, it's about to touch something impure, which we just said is not allowed. Secondly, if the truma does fall into that pit, you know what happens to that whole pit? The whole pit becomes forbidden for anybody to eat. Because now it's got truma mixed into it. A regular Jew can't eat it because there's truma there. Even a Kohen can't eat it because it's impure. So you're about to lose an entire pit of wine. So how do you take care of these two issues? Says the Rambam, Im yachol lahatzal mimena, revius betahara, if there's even a chance that you can save a revius, which is like 3 ounces, a tiny amount of wine. If you can grab 3 ounces of wine in a state of purity, yatzil, save that. As much truma as you can save from becoming impure, save it. V'im lav, if you're not even able to do it in a ritually pure way, yatzil biyadav, b'loi netilas yadayim, v'afal pishu metama. The Torah gives you a license to save the truma with your hands, even if you haven't washed them, like we learned yesterday. You have to wash your hands before you eat truma. Even if you didn't wash your hands, and you're going to make the truma impure on a rabbinic level, as will be explained in the laws of ritual purity, still, it's better to save the truma with your hands and make it impure with your hands than to let it fall into the pit. And the whole thing becomes useless. When do we say this law? First of all, if we're talking about wine. And in the bottom pit, there's less than 100 times the barrel of wine. Remember in the laws of kosher, when it came to milk and meat, the number 60 was very operative. If meat falls into 60 times with milk, so that's with regular stuff. With truma, it's 100. If the truma falls into 100 times itself, it's nullified. Less than 100 times itself, it's not nullified. So the Rambam is saying the case that we're talking about over here has to be where there's less than 100 times wine in the bottom pit. In which case, if the wine falls in, the whole thing is going to become meduma. Meduma means mixed with truma, and it's going to disqualify all the wine. But if there was in the bottom pit 100 times more wine than the barrel, so that even if it breaks and it falls into the lower pit, it's going to be nullified in 101. Or there was a barrel of oil. So actually here we'd rather the wine go down or the oil go down without you intervening with your hands. Because in the case of oil, everything could be used for fuel. When it comes to wine that's impure, a Kohen can't use it. But oil that's impure, you can use it. There's not so much loss. Same thing with the wine. If there's 100 times itself, again, there's no loss because it's going to be nullified. And the same thing is true about a regular barrel of oil that's spilling, not in this scenario of a lower pit and a higher pit, simply spilling on the floor. You're walking down Ventura Boulevard with a barrel of oil of truma, and boom, it falls on the ground and it cracks, and it's starting to spill. So the same principle applies. If you have a way to save a revius, 3 ounces, 4 ounces, impurity, save it. And if not, you can even save it in a state of ritual impurity. And the Sameach says that we're talking about over here, ritually impurity not only of the hands, even of the body. You can save it even if your whole body is impure. Once you're walking down the street and your jug breaks, Torah is not going to get in your way to tell you to only save it if you're pure or not if you're impure. Torah understands that when you have money on the line, people get very agitated very quickly. And if you're not going to let him save it in a state of ritual impurity, you know what he's going to do? He's going to purposely transgress.
Not only that, it's a whole toil that work for a whole year.
It's true. Take that into account as well. It's not just money, it's work, it's time, it's effort, it's sweat, it's tears, it's literally a whole year of work.
Depends when and why.
So yeah. Therefore, the case of the spilled barrel is different. There's even more room for leniency. The Sameach explains even more that when it comes to the wine in the first case, what you're really doing is you're saving the wine in the lower pit, not the truma, because if it becomes impure, nobody can use it. By keeping it pure, somebody can use it. But with the oil, you're saving the truma oil, right? The case is that the barrel is breaking, and you want to be able to use it as fuel, and therefore you're allowed to do so even if you're more impure. Halacha vav. A person is walking down the street, he's carrying loaves of truma, holy loaves. And a non-Jew who wants to play a little bit with the Jew, he comes over and he says to him, listen, tein li achas mehen, either give me a loaf, which is pretty much not allowed because it's truma loaf. He says, give me a loaf, v'im lav hareini nogea bekulan umetaman. If not, I'm going to touch all your loaves and I'm going to make them impure. Kind of like a similar scenario, I mean, not to compare, but way in the beginning of the Rambam, literally like the 5th chapter of the first book, the Rambam was talking about a case of women, where the non-Jews came over to a group of women and they said, here, either give us one of you to violate, or we'll violate you all. Right, same thing over here. Give me one of the loaves of truma, or I'll make them all impure. So what do? You don't do either. It says the Rambam, Yaniach lefanav achas al hasela, va'al yitnana l'seich yadai. You can give one, but put it on a rock. Do not put it into his hand. So at least you're not making the truma impure by hand. The guy will do what he does to it, fine. But it's going to be, you didn't hand it over directly. Halacha zayin, hatilton v'hakarshinin shel truma. Tilton is fenugreek, karshinin is vetch. It's these 2 plants on the screen here. And they have this unique feature in which human beings don't typically eat them, but sometimes we will, if we need to. So you would separate truma from them. Hatilton v'hakarshinin shel truma, fenugreek and vetch of truma, hoyil ve'enei ma'achal adam. Since, generally speaking, they're not eaten by human beings, harei muter lases kol ma'asein betuma. You can do all their acts of preparation in a state of ritual impurity. It's not really considered making truma impure. Ve'enei nizar ella be'eis shriyasan b'mayim. The only time you should be careful is when you soak them in water. Shim shara esam betuma, because if you're going to soak them in a state of ritual impurity, harei tima esam be'adayim. At this point, you made them impure with your hands. Why? The Rambam is hinting here to a rule that we're going to learn about later on in the Rambam's 10th book, and that is that produce from the ground, fruits, vegetables, grain, can only become impure once they come into contact with liquid. In the Torah, there are 7 liquids: wine, oil, honey, milk, dew, water, and oil, whatever. 7 liquids there. So only once produce comes into contact with, blood is the last one. Only once produce comes into contact with liquid is it able to even become impure. Therefore, the Rambam says, when you're preparing the fenugreek and the vetch, do whatever you want. When you soak them in water, now you're getting ready to make them impure. If you're going to be impure, then you're literally bringing tumah onto it with your hands. After you soak them, no need to be careful. Not when you rub down the vetch to get out the kernels, nor when you feed them to the animal. For this reason also, you can give the truma of fenugreek and vetch to a kohen who's not careful with the laws of impurity. even though we said yesterday, or a couple days ago, that you don't give a Kohen who's not careful with impurity, it's just regular truma, because he'll make it impure. But this you could. Halacha ches, ein mafkidin truma etzel kohen amaretz. We don't even deposit truma by a Kohen that is not familiar with the law. So if, let's say David has truma, he got from a friend, he's careful with all the laws, but now he's going on a trip, so he wants to leave his truma with a friend of his, another Kohen, who's not careful. He can't do that. Because the Kohen is familiar with it. He may end up eating it. And if he eats it, he may bring it to impurity. But what you could do is you can deposit truma by a Jew, a regular Jew, who's unfamiliar with the laws of impurity, with a pottery utensil that's surrounded by tzamid pasil. Tzamid pasil is a Torah terminology which means a tight cover.
Ceiling.
A tight ceiling. This is actually archaeological discovered jugs. They found this in Israel. And they used to, like, on the top over here with this seal, they used to layer it with a layer of clay around it, super sealed. When a utensil is super sealed, it's less susceptible to impurity. Even if a dead body touches it, it doesn't become impure. There's different rules. So if you gave a regular Jew who's unfamiliar with the laws of impurity, but you gave him such a sealed barrel, he's going to know, I got to keep away from this. However, there's a condition that it cannot be fruits that have already become susceptible to tumah by touching one of the liquids. That's the term mukhshar. Mukhshar means it's been touched by liquid. Gzeira because of a decree that even though he may not touch it, but his wife may move it while she's a nida, which is forbidden. Now, it's not so simple. The commentaries debate the Rambam because when something is surrounded with a tzamid pasil, with a tight cover, even if somebody moves it and they're ritually impure, it still doesn't make them impure. So it's a bit of a difficulty why the Rambam writes this. But that's what the Rambam writes, that if you're depositing it by a regular Jew, if it's sealed with a good cover, that's great. If there's a wife around, make sure that the fruits are not susceptible to tumah. Halacha tes. Ein oisin la'am ha'aretz trumas zeisav b'tahara. A Jew who is familiar with the laws of ritual impurity should not separate truma for the olives of a Jew who's unfamiliar with the laws of ritual impurity. This is how it used to work. Basically, Jews knew these. It's like today you have Jews that are assimilated and they're not aware that they're assimilated. In those times, Jews who were not keeping all the laws, at least they knew that they weren't doing something right. So if you had a farmer who was not familiar with the laws of ritual purity and impurity, he would still grow his produce and do whatever he wanted, but he would know that, look, if I want the regular Orthodox Jews to buy my stuff, I have to bring in a rabbi or somebody that knows the rules, and he'll separate all the truma for me and everything else. So, the Rambam says, when it comes to olives, this rabbi who's being hired, or whoever's helping him out, cannot do it if the regular farmer processed the olives. In other words, if the regular farmer already loaded the olives onto the press, and he pressed them, and he's coming to the rabbi with the oil, he's saying, here, rabbi, help me with the oil. You can't do that. Why? Because by the time you get to the oil stage, it's already become susceptible to ritual impurity, and the Jew who has been touching them is not familiar with ritual impurity, so he probably made them impure. Therefore, the Rambam says, Ein oisin la'am ha'aretz trumas zeisav b'tahara. You can't just take truma from the olives in a state of purity. Aval oisin lo zeisei chulin b'tahara. What you could do is, you can bring the rabbi in at the beginning of the process, and he can do the whole thing for you. He'll press the olives, and he'll grind them, and he'll crush them, and do everything, and then separate the truma, because then you can be sure that he was involved from beginning to end, and he's taking care of everything. Even that, says the Rambam, was only instituted mishum kedei chayav shel badad levad, only to give life, to give sustenance to the person who runs the press, this more Orthodox Jew. We wanted to give him a chance to have parnassa, so we allowed him to do it. If you were strictly speaking, there's room to be stringent and not even do anything for this unfamiliar Jew. But to provide life, it's okay. The Ketzad Oisa, what do you do? How do you go about separating the truma? Noitel kidea truma, umanicha bikli she'enim mekabel truma. The sage who is helping out this unfamiliar Jew do the whole process, and then when it's time to separate the truma, he takes the truma and he puts it into a utensil which cannot become tameh. Going klei avanim, like a stone utensil. This is, again, the Rambam is hinting to big stuff. We're going to have a whole set of laws in the Rambam's 10th book about how different utensils can become or not become tameh. One of the fundamental rules is that anything made out of stone, if it's pure stone, it cannot become tameh. So you take the olive oil that you're separating for truma, put it into a stone utensil. When the owner, the farmer who's unfamiliar with the laws of impurity, comes at the end of the process to take all his olive oil home, both the regular and the truma oil, the Torah familiar Jew should tell him, he would give him an exaggerated warning. He would say, listen man, here's the regular oil that you can take home, here's the truma in the stone utensil. Do not touch it. If you touch it, the whole process is invalidated. Now, that's not true. But we tell it to him just to scare him, to make sure that it gets to the Kohen in a good way. Halacha Yod Yisrael Sha'isa Piresa Betuma. If we know that a Jew doesn't care about the laws of impurity and he processes his produce in a state of impurity, Ein Beitzrin Imai, Ve'ein Sarich Leimar She'ein Derchin Imai. We don't harvest with him. Certainly we don't crush grapes, like these guys, with him. Because you can almost be certain if he doesn't care about impurity, then he's going to end up separating truma in impurity. But you can bring barrels with him to the wine press because the barrels are empty. And you can also bring the barrels with him from the press because at that point, the deed is done. He's already made it impure. You're not contributing any more impurity. Halacha Yud Aleph. Okay, for this, we have to introduce a concept which we're really going to not spend a lot of time on, but just to understand this halacha. In the laws of ritual impurity, there are what's called different degrees of tumah. We begin with what's called the Av Tumah, a father of impurity. And like a father has children, you have Rishon Latuma, first degree impurity, Sheni, second degree, Shlishi, third degree, and even goes to Revi. And in very rare cases there's Chamishi, but usually it's Revi, that's where it ends. Okay, so you have a father, first, second, third, and fourth degrees. What's a classic example of a father of Tumah? Is a dead body. A dead body is like the highest, this dead body is Avi Avois, he's even the father of the fathers. Let's say someone touches a dead body, okay? You touch a dead body, you're a Avatuma. You're a father of impurity. If the father of impurity touches a utensil, that utensil then becomes Rishon, first degree impurity. If the utensil touches food, the food becomes second degree impurity. If that food touches other food, then if it's regular food, it's not affected. But if it's truma can become shlishi. Truma can become third degree impure. And if that impure truma touches other foods, so if it's regular or even if it's truma, it doesn't work, nothing happens. But if it's kodashim, if it's sacrificial meat, there's even a fourth level of tumah. And that's the basic hierarchy of how it works. So, knowing this, says the Rambam the following. And let's also keep in mind one more rule, that food can only become impure if it's an egg size, a kabetza. So, knowing all this, says the Rambam, Zeisim va'anavim shenitmu. You have olives or grapes that became impure. They touched something impure. Soichaton va'oisa oisan truma. You can squeeze them out and separate truma from the oil or the wine. In other words, even though the olives and the grapes became impure, the wine and the oil is considered pure. Why? Because we're talking about a case of sheni. That's how the commentaries explain it. It's second degree tumah. There was someone touched a dead body, touched the utensil, that touched the grapes and the olives. So the grapes and the olives are a sheni. They're second degree tumah. So when you squeeze the olives and the grapes and you get wine and oil out of them, since I told you before that regular food cannot become third degree impure, and that's the case here, it's still regular, so you can crush the olives and the grapes, and then later designate them as truma, that's fine. But if they became impure after already having been designated as truma, so now you do have a problem. Now if you're going to squeeze them out, on truma there is a third degree of tuma, third degree of impurity, and it'll become impure. So what do? If you squeeze them out less than an egg portion at a time. If you squeeze them out at small portions, then whatever liquid comes out is permitted to the Kohanim. It's even permitted to be used on the Mizbeach. You can pour it as part of the libations. Because we treat, according to halacha, we treat liquid inside a fruit as deposited, not attached. There's a debate in the Talmud, right? If there's wine in a grape, so is the wine attached to the grape, or the wine is like in a cup, like you have water in a cup, right? Water in a cup is not attached to the cup, it's just deposited in the cup. So halachically, we say that the juice in a grape is mufkad, it's deposited, it's not intertwined, and therefore, even if the oil and the grapes became impure, by squeezing them out in smaller portions, you're simply squeezing out detached liquid. And the only reason they said to do less than an egg-sized portion, that's only because we're worried that you're going to do it in bigger portions, bigger than an egg, which will cause the liquid to become tameh in an egg portion. And then it will become shlishi, third degree. If these produce to begin with were already a third degree of impurity, you can literally press them in a wine press or in an olive press, and whatever resulting liquid comes out is totally pure. Because when it comes to truma, third degree truma cannot transmit a fourth degree. When it comes to truma, as will be explained at length in the Rambam's 10th book. The only time you can get to the fourth level is if it's sacrificial meat. Truma cannot, and therefore, if the fruits of truma were at a third degree truma, you can press them no problem. Okay? We're done with this complicated stuff for now. Halacha Yud Beis. Pas truma shenitmes. If you have bread of truma which became impure, mashlicha lebeisa eitzim ad sheyisrfena. You don't have to burn it right away. Ideally, you should. But what you could do is you can throw it in your firewood box till you have to use it for fuel, and then you burn it later. V'chein shemen shenitma. Also, oil that became impure. Ideally, you should burn it right away. But if not, nisnei biklimos ad sheyadlik. At least put it into a disgusting utensil that nobody will come to use for a salad or whatever till you burn it up. So it shouldn't cause a mistake for others who will eat it. If you have wheat that became impure, also boil them and put them into a disgusting utensil, so they shouldn't be fit to eat. And then you can use them to heat up an oven or a stove. But if you have liquid, which cannot be used as fuel, and it became impure, like wine, you simply bury them. Even though you could use wine technically for fragrance, but we don't want you to put it away. It's very high chance that it's going to be used for drinking, which is improper, and therefore you just bury it.
You have to bury them with the kli, or just pour them into a pit?
Pour them in a hole in the ground. Halacha Yud Gimel. Yayin truma, or yain truma shenizgala. Truma wine which was left open overnight. Since open liquids overnight are forbidden to be drunk, you literally pour it out. Usually you don't look to destroy truma, but in this case you have to. If you have figs or grapes or squash, calabash squash, kishuyim is the cucumis mellow. This guy. And calabash squash, that's this. Watermelons, cucumbers of truma. If any of these 6 species were found to be pecked at, it seems like some animal or rodent ate from them. It's forbidden to be eaten because of danger.
So if you
mortal danger.
If you find one of them, then the whole bunch is gone?
No, just the ones that were pecked at, yeah.
How about bugs?
Huh?
How about bugs?
Same thing. So ma yasa ben, what do you do with these fruits that you found pecked at? Yashlich layam or yikavru. Throw them to the ocean or bury them. In other words, get rid of them. Yudalid isa shenilesha b'mayim megulim. If you kneaded a dough with water that was left open overnight, afal pishi truma tisaref, even though it's truma, burn it. That's how strict we are when it comes to things of danger. We stay away from liquid kept open overnight to the extreme. Halacha tezvav. Now the Rambam concludes this chapter with the laws of the Kohen getting his gifts. Kohen is the one who receives the truma, but you have to be given, you can't take. There's a saying in Israel, they say, Zchut ktima mekablim, lo lokchim. Right? It's like you have a pedestrian who has the right of way. Doesn't mean you just walk into the street. Your right of way has to be acknowledged. You can't just take it. Same thing with the Kohen. Also, l'koyin litol truma or sharma tanis shaloi ad sheyafrishu oisam abaylim. It's forbidden for a Kohen to simply walk into your house and take the truma or any of his other gifts, unless it was separated by the owners. Shenemar, because it says, Reishisam asher yitnu la'Hashem l'cha nesatim. The beginnings which they give to God, I give it to you. Once the Jew gives it away, then the Kohen can take it. The Nemar, it also says, Sheyarimu v'nei Yisrael la'Hashem nasati l'cha. Once the Jews lifted it up, then I gave it to you, which means ad sheyarimu v'achar kach yizkeh behem. First they must lift it up, then you can acquire it. Even after they were designated, the Kohen should not take them, unless with the consent of the owners. Even though Truma belongs to the Kohen, it's at the prerogative of the owner to choose which Kohen. If he has a friend, he can give it to his friend. Because it says, every person owns his holy objects, which means you have the right to give it to whoever you want. But if the Kohen takes it anyway, without the consent, after the fact, he acquires it, because the only thing that the owners have is the option of who to give it to. This concept of having an option doesn't have monetary worth. So if the Kohen takes it, he didn't really take anything from you, and therefore he can keep it. A Kohen is given a bundle of truma, he walks home and he finds money inside it. Other stuff. It's forbidden. It's like robbing. You have to give it back. Maybe somebody else put it there for storage or for hiding, and he's coming back to get it. He's not going to have it. You have to give it back. When a regular Jew has truma, he doesn't have to take care of it. He doesn't have to bring it from the granary to the city or from the desert to the inhabited place. Go to the granary. Here's the picture of our granary from last time. I'm trying to find it over here. Oh, this is the granary. Yeah. Go to the granary. This was usually outside the city. And go get your stuff. We're not obligated to go and bring it all the way to you, to your doorstep. It's not a full service over here. Come collect it. If they didn't come out, the Kohanim don't want to come out. The Jew just puts it aside, leaves it in the granary, tells the Kohen, look, when you're ready, it's here for you. But if in the granary there was danger that an animal or a beast will eat it, and it's not protected, then then the sages said to the Jew, listen, it's going to be eaten up here. Bring it to the city. You have to take care of it, but we'll give you a leniency. You can charge the Kohen for your services of bringing it there. If you're going to just separate your truma and leave it to the animals, you're desecrating Hashem's name. That's not okay. It's going to get destroyed. Yudches asur lekoyanim uleviim l'sayeya beveis hagranos kidei lital matneseim. It's forbidden for a Kohen or a Levi to help out, do a guy a favor, to get his goodwill, to get the presents. Why? Because it's supposed to be a gift, not an exchange. V'chala mesayeya chilel kodesh Hashem. Any Kohen or Levi who helps out desecrated Hashem's holiness. Va'aleihem nemar, about them it says in Malachi, shichatem bris halevi. You have destroyed the covenant of the Levites. Va'asur li Yisrael lahaniche sheyasayehu. Besides for the Kohen, it's forbidden for the Jew to even let the Kohen help him out. Elonesim lahem chelkan b'kavod. You give them their portion with honor, with dignity. You don't have to work for your stuff. Yutes nasan truma lekoyen amanas la'achazira. If you gave truma to a Kohen and you told him, listen, I'm only giving it to you to give it back to me. It's not a full gift. It's called matana al-manat lahachazir, a gift to give back. Yatsa yedei nesina. Technically, you fulfill your obligation because a matana al-manas lahachazir is a good matana. It's a good gift. The osir lasis came, but it's forbidden to do so because it looks like you're helping out in the granary because you're doing a little exchange. Here, you take it, give it back to me. It's also forbidden in general for a Kohen to just grab his gifts. And even to ask verbally for their portions. It's forbidden. They should take it with honor. A Kohen eats and drinks from the table of God. Really, if you think about it, Truma is a gift to God, and God is giving it to the Kohanim. It's Hashem's gift to you. Shenemar, as it says, I'm giving you the guardianship of my Truma. So you're eating from God's table, you don't just grab. Take it with honor. If a person has an employed watchman, he's a guard, happens to be a Kohen, you can't give him Truma. You can't give him your truma from the wine press. V'loi b'cher l'shemer edra. Nor can you give your firstborn animal to the Kohen who watches your flock. V'loi matanos l'reya behemtei. Nor can you give the matanos. This is a gift. Every animal that you slaughter, you have to give the Kohen 3 parts of the animal: the foreleg, the cheekbones, and part of the stomach. You can't give it to your own personal shepherd. The nasan chilel. If you gave it, you desecrated the holiness. Elohim kei nasan lehem schar shmir nasan chilel. Unless you first paid them their fee for their watching, because then, otherwise, it looks like you're giving him a gift in exchange for his services. It's permitted for a Jew to tell another Jew, 2 regular Jews, not a Kohen. You can say, listen, hey lecha selazu, here's a coin, v'tein trumai b'chayr oishar matanes lepleini akayin, and give it. It's like, let's say I tell Amnon, okay, here you have truma. I like David, so I'm going to pay you to give David your truma. Ben Biti, Ben Achesi, maybe he's my grandson, maybe he's my nephew. Anything similar like that. So while the Kohen can't do anything, one regular Jew can pay another regular Jew to give his truma to who he wants. When are we talking about? It's only if the owner already had a plan to give it to one of these 2 Kohanim for free, or one of these 2 Leviim. The guy is paying him out to give it to one of the Kohanim who he already had in mind. But if the owner already told a Kohen or a Levi, here, I want you to have this portion as my prerogative, then it's forbidden. Because now if you're arranging it, it looks like you're selling the truma. In general, it's forbidden to make business with truma. Even if I'm buying from one Kohen, selling it to another, you don't do business with truma. Halacha Chav Beis, the final halacha, asara ein chelkin lahen truma bebeis hagranis. There are 10 Kohanim which we do not give them truma in the granary. Even though they're eligible to eat truma, and they're even eligible to pass it on to their family members. Doesn't matter. In the granary, we don't give them truma. Who are they? They are the following: hacheresh v'ashaita, a deaf mute, a mentally unstable person, v'hakatan she'ein b'das lifresh chukai, or lifresh chukai, a child who doesn't have the maturity yet to spread out his law. What does it mean, spread out his law? Kesef says it means birkat kohanim. He doesn't know how to spread out his hands properly to do the priestly blessing. Because these 3 don't have the fit mental capacity. We also don't give truma in the granary to a person who's a tumtum. That means his genital area is blocked. Or androgenes, he has both reproductive organs. Because they're in a category of their own. Number 6, you don't give a slave truma in the granary. It might cause people to think he's a Kohen. People won't know that he's a servant of a Kohen. They'll think he's an actual Kohen. That can create some serious problems in Yichos, in genealogy, in marriage. The 7 and 8 is the uncircumcised Kohen, or a impure Kohen, because they're considered disgusting for that time, till they get a bris or become pure. We don't give a woman truma in the granary, because she might get divorced and not be eligible for truma, and also, we don't want to create yichud issues, seclusion issues with other men. Also, a Kohen who married a woman that's not fitting for him, we penalize him, we fine him. We don't give him truma in the granary till he divorces her. Nevertheless, even though these 10 Kohanim, we don't give them truma in the granary, we would send it to their homes. And we give them a portion like any other holy food in Israel. 7 out of the 10. Besides for the Kohen who married a woman who's forbidden to him, and also an impure Kohen and a Kohen without a bris. Those 3 people, we don't send them truma at all. Commentaries say with the Arel, with the uncircumcised person, at least it's only talking about a case where he's purposely uncircumcised. If the Torah allowed him to be uncircumcised, for example, he has 2 brothers who died from a bris, then he's not doing it purposely, and then you could send him the truma. But the point is, these 10 don't get in the granary, some of them still do get at home.